The US shock has sent the government of India scurrying to form a counter economic strategy. A big part of that is consumption boost. Believe me, in 75 years, government of India or any state governments have never thought boosting consumption is a policy. And because they haven't thought of that as a policy, the responses that they are creating are often peculiar and actually contradictory. This is what I examine in this edition of On Point. Well, the government has said it wants people to spend more. Towards that, in this Independence Day speech, Prime Minister Modi has said that he will get the GST Council to cut the rates of GST taxes. The idea is that people will have more income in their hands and they will spend it. Consumption is a big difficult thing, however, in India. Why? Just look at this, look at these examples. If people want to increase consumption, that's a very good idea from an economic point of view. Why? Because my consumption is your income. So it makes sense. If people consume more, they create more income. But where do this thing start to fall into a difficult position? Let's try three things that in India doesn't happen. Traveling. The other one is tourism, and the third, which the government of India has just banned yesterday through the bill that's coming up, the Online Gaming Act. Now don't get me wrong, I am not saying that the poorest people should be spending money doing online money gaming, but let's unpack this one by one, because consumption is a very interesting thing. Unlike an investment in a road or in a port or in a railway line, consumption is not decided by government officers. Consumption is what you and I do when I feel or when you feel like doing something. I can't be forced to spend on something with which I am not sure that I want to spend. The problem is our government officers, even ministers, have some clues on investment. In fact, they've got quite a good ideas on investment. They have no clues on consumption. Why? Because India was a poor country. Now to tell the people that you should consume more sounds fine, but what will you consume if the government starts deciding? Then obviously that is going to be counterproductive. So let's take the one which is right up our street right now, online gaming. Now we know that obviously the easiest games that happen are those games of chance, where I put a certain money and if the winning comes through, I make a profit. It's easy. The government says, no, don't do that. Instead, get into esports, which are games of skill. So you fight with teams online on certain targets and others. The problem is, whether it's esports or whether it's any other forms of simpler games, somebody has to spend money developing those games, isn't it? Now, if that person isn't sure of a revenue stream, why should that person create that portal? You could say that fine, there could be advertising to bring that portal on, there could be some other means to come through, but unless the portal has reached a particular level of popularity, why would advertisers come there? I might want my YouTube channel to be extremely popular, but if there's no readers, listeners like you, why should advertisers come? So it's the same thing all over. Banks will not be financing these gaming portals, isn't it? In fact, banks, since they've been told not to facilitate transactions, banks will be even more leery about giving money to a startup guy, say, who wants to raise money to create a portal. So that's out. So a huge possibility that people get by getting onto these games is now being monitored by the government, that these are good games, go for it, these are not good games, don't go for it. Will it work? Obviously it won't. I mean, the government of India spends so much tax on cigarettes, but that's something that we can come along other times, but still there are 275 million people who smoke. So the point is, that sort of a regulation will not work. Instead, it runs the risk of making this industry defunct. Esports, as it is across the world, isn't doing particularly well after the the huge boost of last decade. It's actually started to taper off. So if somebody wants to spend money creating income for someone else through a game, that's not on. So that's one consumption story gone. Okay, then let's get the people out to go for tourism. How many tourism spots in India for the lower income group offer any sort of decent facilities? People go for religious tourism and they try to use the shortest way, like use the shortest possible way to reach there, stay for the shortest amount of time and then come back fast to escape risks. But just to spread time there, to really travel for tourism, how many spots the state governments are encouraging to really encourage people to spend money on? Most tourism spots have restrictions on what you can eat, what you can drink, what you can do, and they are horrible islands of dirty, of garbage piling up. So why should people go for tourism? Remember, tourism is also another very big consumption story, because if people go for tourism, it's not a very technically savvy thing. There's lots of people who can get income, again from the same income groups which the government is targeting, the poorer people, because it doesn't take much. Third part is, people get out into the cities to enjoy themselves in parks or in open spaces. How many Indian cities have spaces for people to just simply laze around in an open space, to play, to encourage their children to move around, for themselves to play? Are any cities developing spaces? Now don't look just at Delhi, but there are other cities developing spaces for people to just move around and enjoy. There aren't. In fact, you hardly ever get any media article about a state government saying that I want to create such a huge open space for people to enjoy. If they created huge kilometers away from the city, which takes us to vehicles, but that's another thing that we'll come to shortly. So traveling within the city is also out. The fourth part, markets. Why has e-commerce taken off in a big way in India? Because the people do not find enjoyment in going to the markets. There could be some special articles about some niche market somewhere which look very great, but try traveling through any market in Delhi, Mumbai, Mangaluru, Kolkata, any place. You just will not want to come back. And it's not about us. It's the people themselves who buy, the middle class and the lower middle class, who have retreated to the safety of their homes to buy their stuff. So as a result, the markets are seeing falling footfalls. There isn't any effort or initiative in real time, not piecemeal efforts, to create avenues for people to shop in these places. So if people don't go out, why should they consume? They'll consume only the necessity. If you think where's this leading to, my short answer is over regulation. To consume, to let people consume, people must be regulated less. Consumption depends on freedom. Let the shops be open for longer number of hours. Let the people be on the roads for longer number of hours. For people to travel, let there be vehicles, public transport for longer number of hours. A very good example of where this fails is our surprisingly metro tickets. Metro lines are all over the city, but for the poorer people, it is becoming difficult to buy a ticket. You know why? Because while a metro card is easy, you can buy it with cash. The governments at all levels frown on the use of cash, rightly so, but in the process what they have done, they have said use the app on your phone. Apps on the phone has spread to lots of people, but there are lots more people who are still not comfortable using their app connected to a bank account or to one of the fintech companies to be able to buy tickets. I am sure the more people will be getting accustomed to it, but as an intermediate level, why don't you give them the opportunity to buy long term tickets just by using a card and using cash? Let them get into the habit. Once they see that, they will gravitate, they will graduate. But in metro numbers, especially in large metros like Delhi, it is so difficult to buy a metro card. Over regulation, over enthusiasm to move to a particular target instead of looking at what is it that people really need. So the challenge is very clear. If you want people to consume more, you got to give them more freedom. The Indian state, along with making good smart policies, the biggest policy reform they need to give is to give people freedom to enjoy themselves. Once they start enjoying themselves, they will consume more, not by government diktat to consume more. And that's all from this edition of 1 Point.